Hey everyone, Cassius here, welcoming you back to the Shakespeare Minute. Today I am going to be doing episode 2 of the feature Shakespeare Speaks, where I discuss Shakespeare's language. Today's episode will be focused on 3 words that Shakespeare uses in a slightly different way than we do: nature, art, and fortune. So nature, art, and fortune are words that we use today, and because of that it's actually sometimes a little difficult to understand the ways in which Shakespeare uses these words. Now, nature for us conjures up an immediate image. It's, natural green things, outdoors, that kind of thing. And it also, in a secondary meaning, has to do with human nature, the nature of something, those traits that makes it what it is. And that is how nature is most often used in Shakespeare, to refer to human nature, that which you naturally will be, regardless of what happens to you in this world. You were born in a certain way, and that is your nature. It refers to both physical and personality traits. So if you are intelligent or witty, that is something that nature gave you. If you're beautiful, that's something nature gave you. And it's often contrasted, nature is, with art and fortune, the 2 other concepts that we'll get to in a little bit. Nature is often personified, typically as a woman, but just personified generally, often, because nature does something, it creates you, and nature works in these bizarre ways. Nature will make somebody beautiful but dishonest, or ugly but honest, and these are the comparisons that through these tricks of fate and fortune, who we'll also get to, that nature will create these bizarre combinations that don't make sense. And that's often a way that nature is used that we might not recognize. Nature, in this personified kind of way. It's not just referring to the traits that someone has, but it's this active kind of force in your life that kicked off who you are, or who the people around you are. The most famous use of the word nature, I think, in Shakespeare has got to be Edmund in King Lear at the beginning, his famous speech, "Thou, nature, art my goddess." He was born naturally. He wasn't a product of a legal, worldly relationship, but rather just a physical one, since he is illegitimate. So he doesn't believe in the world putting things on top of what happens naturally. He's going to just worship nature, those things that are already there, not the worldly things like the arts, or even fortune, our third concept here. But to really get into how nature is used, it's helpful to contrast it with these 2 other concepts, at which point we'll get to some fun examples that sort of show us ways in which these words are used that we might not immediately understand. So first I'm going to talk about art. Now, art, unlike nature and fortune, is not personified. Art just refers to the learning that you've done in this life. So if you have a philosophy, that can be referred to as art. If you have any sort of learning in any of the disciplines, which are also called the arts, in another kind of definition of the word, that would also be your art. Anything that is a flourish on top of the basic matter of what is there, or the basic person that you're dealing with. So art is contrasted with nature quite a lot. So there's this one point in Twelfth Night where Sir Andrew, who is a very foolish knight, is very upset about things, and he's saying that he wished he had followed the arts, meaning the disciplines of the languages, learning the languages, which he has not done. And Sir Toby, his much wittier friend, says to him, well, if you had followed the arts, you would have a much better head of hair, because it will not curl by nature. The nature of his hair is to not be curly, but if you followed the arts, perhaps it might curl, because it won't do it by nature, perhaps by art it will. Now, of course, your hair can't really learn, so that's obviously just a joke that Toby's making, not so funny and not as much of a thing that will land today, but that is the way that these words are used. Nature versus art. Nature being what you have already, and art being what you can learn. In Julius Caesar, there's another great line that contrasts these 2. Brutus has just found out that his wife is dead, and he's using his philosophy of stoicism to sort of handle it and take it in stride as he deals with his military campaign at hand. And Cassius says, I have as much of this in art as you, and yet my nature could not bear it so. I've learned how to do this. I know the Stoic philosophy, but my nature couldn't handle it. My personality won't accept this kind of art as easily as yours. Another thing about nature in contrast to art is that if someone is natural, that can often be used to mean that they're foolish because they don't have the art, the learning, the education that goes on top of nature to make somebody the fully educated, knowledgeable human being that they're supposed to be. Sir Andrew Aguecheek of Twelfth Night is referred to as a natural because he is such an idiot who has so little art. Fortune, another personified woman, very specifically a woman referred to as that housewife Fortune, or often a harlot because she'll just sort of give things away to people who don't deserve it. So Fortune is worldly instances of things happening to you. It's not your own learning, your own doing, but rather the gifts of fortune. If you are highborn, that is often considered a fortune thing, not a nature thing. One really fun back and forth in As You Like It shows Rosalind and Celia talking about that whole honesty and beauty mismatch that they perceive in the world, saying that fortune rarely makes women both beautiful and honest, specifically women, beautiful and honest, where at this point, of course, it is raised that, well, beauty is from nature, so it's this contrast between the two, that fortune will visit things on people who have natural gifts and perhaps take those natural gifts away. Celia says, may not fortune throw a beautiful person into the fire and take away that beauty. We have wit to discuss this. We have wit enough to discuss this, but fortune is going to stop our conversation by bringing people in to interrupt us. So there's nature, but then there's also fortune, which comes in and can in fact interrupt what was naturally there. One more moment in which nature and fortune are contrasted is when Orsino in Twelfth Night talks about his love for Olivia, saying that he doesn't care what fortune has given her in this world because fortune is giddy, and he holds fortune's gifts to her as giddily as fortune, but rather those things that nature has given her, that is what attracts him, because that would be the purer, more enduring love of the two. So there you have it. Nature, art, and fortune. Three things which, while we understand them today, also have these very different, almost Greek mythological connotations in Shakespeare's plays, and that can often explain the way that the words are used, even in these witty exchanges that might not make as much sense to us if you think about these words using these specific connotations. I'm sure that as you go through your Shakespeare reading and watching, you will see these words pop up in these ways, and it's definitely something to keep in mind to help reveal a few more layers of meaning in what the characters are talking about. I hope that this has been an illuminating experience again for Shakespeare Speaks on the Shakespeare Minute. Till next time, I'm Cassius. Think of the world.